What happens when one careless joke at a crowded office party leads to the end of your marriage? Why did I come home to a lawyer's letter on my kitchen table, and my family suddenly taking sides against me? I thought it was just a laugh. So how did my husband turn my life upside down without ever raising his voice? Before we dive deeper into this story, I have one small request. Please subscribe, drop a like, comment, and hit that hype button to boost this channel so more people can discover these incredible stories. The Christmas party at Romano's bar was already in full swing when I decided to have another drink. The logistics office crowd was looser than usual, ties undone and heels kicked off under tables. I felt electric that night, wearing my new red dress that hugged all the right places. "Morwenna, you look amazing," Jessica from accounting squealed, already 3 drinks in. "Elliot's a lucky guy." I glanced across the room where my husband sat nursing his second beer, looking uncomfortable in his pressed shirt. He'd barely spoken to anyone all evening, just nodded politely when introduced, and checked his phone every few minutes. "Lucky?" I laughed, accepting another wine from Zane Lister. Zane worked in shipping, all broad shoulders and easy smiles. "I'm the lucky one here." The group around us giggled. Someone mentioned how cute Elliot and I looked together, and I felt that familiar irritation bubble up. Cute. Like we were teenagers instead of a married couple with a 7-year-old son. "You know what's funny?" I said, the wine making me bold. "Everyone thinks the quiet ones are the best in bed, but honestly..." I paused for dramatic effect, watching Zane's amused expression. Zane here could teach my husband a thing or two. The laughter erupted around our little circle. Jessica nearly choked on her martini. Even Marcus from HR, usually so serious, cracked a smile. "Morwenna," Sarah from reception gasped, but she was laughing too. "You can't say things like that." "What? It's just a joke," I protested, but I caught Zane's eye and felt that familiar flutter. "I mean, look at him. Those hands probably know their way around more than shipping containers." More laughter. I was the center of attention, witty and daring. This was the version of myself I loved, confident, desired, interesting. Not the tired mother who argued with Elliot about grocery bills and whose idea of excitement was a new Netflix series. "Your secret's safe with us," Zane said with a wink, his hand briefly touching my lower back as he reached for his drink. I didn't notice Elliot had moved closer until I heard his quiet voice behind me. "Morwenna, we should go. The babysitter needs to leave by midnight." The group turned, suddenly awkward. I felt my cheeks burn, but not from embarrassment, from annoyance. "Already? The night's just getting started." I forced a bright smile. "Elliot's always the responsible one. Keeps me in line." "It's fine," he said evenly. "I'll wait by the door." As he walked away, I caught a few exchanged glances. The energy had shifted, become uncomfortable. "He seems nice," Jessica offered weakly. "He is," I said quickly. "Just practical. You know how insurance adjusters are. Everything's about risk management." The conversation moved on, but I kept thinking about Elliot's expression. Had he heard what I said? Surely not the whole thing. And even if he had, it was obviously a joke. Everyone knew that. When we got home, Elliot paid the babysitter while I checked on Toby. Our son was fast asleep, his dark hair messy against the pillow. He looked so much like his father, serious even in sleep. "How was the party?" Mrs. Chen asked, as Elliot handed her $40. "Fine," he replied. "Toby was good?" "Perfect angel. Homework done, teeth brushed, lights out by 9. After she left, I expected Elliot to ask about the party, maybe comment on how late we'd stayed. Instead, he went straight to the bathroom to brush his teeth. "That was fun," I said, following him. "You should have mingled more. People were asking about you." He nodded, focused on his reflection in the mirror. "The shipping department is really friendly. Zane was telling everyone about this hiking trip he's planning. Sounds amazing." Still nothing. "Elliot, are you okay?" "Just tired," he said, rinsing his mouth. Long week. But something felt different. Usually, even when he was tired, Elliot would ask about my conversations, show interest in the office gossip I shared. Tonight, he seemed distant, distracted. I convinced myself I was imagining things. The party had been perfect. I'd been charming, funny, the center of attention. If Elliot was moody, that was his problem. The next morning, Toby seemed unusually quiet over breakfast. Everything okay, sweetheart? I asked, ruffling his hair. Are you and Dad fighting? The question caught me off guard. Fighting? No, honey. Why would you think that? Dad was in the kitchen really late last night. I heard him moving around. I glanced at Elliot, who was reading something on his phone. Dad probably just couldn't sleep. Sometimes grown-ups have trouble sleeping. Is it because of work? Something like that, Elliot said quietly, not looking up. At the office Monday morning, I was surprised by how many people mentioned the party. Usually, office events were forgotten by the next week, but this one seemed to have staying power. You were so funny Friday night, Marcus said, stopping by my desk. That thing about your husband, brutal. I laughed, but felt a small twist of unease. Just joking around. Zane's been walking around with a huge grin all weekend. I think you boosted his ego. The unease grew stronger. Had my joke been that memorable? I tried to remember exactly what I'd said, but the wine had made the details fuzzy. Around lunch, Zane appeared at my cubicle. Hey there, troublemaker, he said, leaning against my desk. Recovered from Friday night? Barely, I replied, trying to match his casual tone. I may have had one too many. You were perfect, honest, funny, refreshing. His voice dropped lower. We should talk sometime, somewhere more private. My pulse quickened. Talk about what? About whether you were really joking. Before I could respond, he was gone, leaving me staring at his retreating figure. Around me, the office hummed with its usual activity, but I felt like everyone was watching, listening. That evening, Elliot came home earlier than usual. I was helping Toby with homework when I heard his key in the door. Dad. Toby ran to greet him, and I watched Elliot's face soften as he hugged our son. How was school, buddy? Good. Mum's helping me with fractions. That's great. Elliot's eyes met mine over Toby's head. Something in his expression made my stomach clench. After dinner, after Toby was in bed, we sat in the living room with the TV on. But Elliot wasn't watching. He was looking at his phone, scrolling through something with intense focus. Work emails? I asked. Something like that. You've been distracted lately. Is everything okay at the office? He set down his phone and looked at me directly for the first time in days. Morwenna, is there anything you want to tell me about Friday night? My heart skipped. What do you mean? About the party, about what you said. The room felt suddenly smaller. I said a lot of things. It was a party. About me, about Zane. The words hung between us like a challenge. I could tell the truth, apologize, explain it was just wine and showing off. Or I could stick to my story. Elliot, you're being paranoid. It was just office humor. Everyone jokes around at those things. So you did say something. I might have made some silly comment. I honestly don't remember everything. I had a few drinks. I forced a laugh. You can't take that stuff seriously. He nodded slowly, but his expression didn't change. Right, just jokes. But as he went back to his phone, I realized something had shifted between us. The easy comfort of our marriage felt strained, fragile. And somewhere in the back of my mind, Zane's words echoed. About whether you were really joking. The text came Tuesday afternoon while I was updating shipping manifests. Coffee? Need to discuss Friday. Z. I stared at the message, my finger hovering over the delete button. The smart thing would be to ignore it, pretend the party conversation never happened. But something rebellious in me, something that craved excitement, typed back. When? Now. Café Luna, 2 blocks east. I told my supervisor I was taking a late lunch and grabbed my coat. The December air was sharp against my face as I walked, each step feeling like a small betrayal and a small thrill. Zane was already there, sitting in a corner booth with 2 cups of coffee. He'd changed out of his work uniform into a fitted sweater that showed off his build. "You came," he said, standing to pull out my chair. I was curious about what was so urgent. "Was it true?" he asked without preamble. "What you said about your husband?" I felt heat creep up my neck. "Zane, I was drunk. People say stupid things when they're drunk." "That's not what I asked." The directness of his gaze made me squirm. In the fluorescent lighting of the office, our flirtation had seemed harmless, playful. Here, in the intimate setting of the cafe, it felt dangerous. "My marriage is complicated," I heard myself saying. "Elliot's a good man, but he's distant, predictable. We've been together since college, and sometimes I feel like I'm disappearing." "You don't seem like the disappearing type." "You'd be surprised. At home, I'm just Toby's mum and Elliot's wife. Here at work, I get to be myself." "And who is that?" I met his eyes, someone who deserves to feel alive. What happened next felt inevitable. His hand covered mine on the table. His thumb traced circles on my palm. We talked about our dreams, our frustrations, the ways we felt trapped by expectations. When I finally looked at my watch, I'd been gone for 2 hours. "I have to get back," I said, panic creeping in. "This doesn't have to be complicated, Morwenna. We're both adults." Walking back to the office, I felt like I was floating and drowning simultaneously. The rational part of my brain screamed warnings, but the rest of me felt more alive than I had in years. That evening, Elliot was waiting in the kitchen when I got home. "How was your day?" he asked, the question loaded with something I couldn't identify. "Fine. Busy. You know how end-of-year shipping gets." "Long lunch today." It wasn't a question. My mouth went dry. "How would you know that?" "Jessica called looking for you around 2. Said your supervisor told her you'd been gone since 1. I forced a casual shrug. "I had errands to run, Christmas shopping." In the middle of a Tuesday. "Elliot, what is this? Are you tracking my movements now?" "I'm trying to understand why my wife is lying to me." The word lying hit like a slap. "I'm not lying, I don't have to account for every minute of my day." "You do when you're gone for 2 hours without explanation." "Fine. I had coffee with a friend." "Is that a crime?" "Which friend?" The trap closed around me. I could feel it, but I was too deep in to back out. "Just someone from work. You don't know them." Elliot nodded, but his expression had gone cold. "Right, someone I don't know." That night, he slept on the couch. When I asked why, he said he didn't want to disturb me since he'd been having trouble sleeping. The next morning, Toby found him there. "Why is Dad sleeping in the living room?" "He's just been staying up late working," I said quickly. "Sometimes it's easier to fall asleep on the couch." But Toby's worried expression told me he wasn't buying it. At work, I threw myself into my tasks, trying to ignore the way Zane smiled when he passed my desk, the way conversations seemed to pause when I entered the break room. Had word of our coffee date spread? Or was I being paranoid? Thursday afternoon, my phone rang. The caller ID showed my mother-in-law's name. "Hi, Janet." "Morwenna, dear, how are you?" Janet Grant had always been polite to me, but we'd never been close. She was one of those women who believed her son could do no wrong, and I'd always felt like I was being measured against some impossible standard. "I'm fine, just busy with work." "I was hoping we could have tea this weekend, just the 2 of us." My stomach dropped. Janet never invited me for tea. "Is everything okay?" "Oh, you know how it is. Family should spend more time together, especially during the holidays." But her tone suggested this wasn't about holiday bonding. "Saturday afternoon," she continued. "Around 2. I agreed because refusing would seem suspicious, but I spent the rest of the week dreading it. Meanwhile, things at home continued to deteriorate. Elliot spoke to me only when necessary, and even then in clipped formal sentences. He focused all his attention on Toby, helping with homework, reading bedtime stories, playing video games. It was like I'd become invisible in my own house. Friday night he worked late, or said he was working late. For the first time, I wondered if he was the one having secrets. Saturday morning, I found him in the kitchen going through a stack of papers. "What's all that?" "Bills," he said without looking up. "Phone records." "Phone records? Why?" "Checking for errors. You know how careful I am about finances." But something about the way he said it made my skin crawl. I thought about my texts with Zane, the calls we'd started having after Toby went to bed. Surely Elliot wouldn't actually investigate our phone records. That would be crazy, paranoid behavior. Wouldn't it? At Janet's house that afternoon, I tried to project normalcy. Her living room was exactly as I remembered. Floral wallpaper, doilies on every surface, photos of Elliot from childhood through college covering the mantelpiece. "How's Toby adjusting to second grade?" she asked, pouring tea from a china set I'd never seen her use. "Really well, he loves his teacher." "And Elliot, how's he doing?" "Fine. Busy with work, but fine." Janet set down her cup and looked at me directly. "Morwenna, I'm going to be frank with you. I've heard some concerning things." My blood turned to ice. "What kind of things?" "About the office Christmas party. About comments you made." "Who told you that?" "It doesn't matter who. What matters is that my son is hurting, and I want to understand why." I felt cornered, defensive. "Janet, I think there's been a misunderstanding. Office parties get gossipy, people exaggerate. So you didn't publicly humiliate your husband by comparing him unfavorably to another man?" The words hung in the air like an accusation. Put that way, my joke sounded cruel, calculated. "It wasn't like that. It was just, people were joking around, and I made a silly comment. I never meant to hurt anyone." "But you did hurt someone. You hurt Elliot." "Has he talked to you about this?" "He doesn't need to. I can see it in his face. That boy hasn't looked this miserable since his father died." The comparison stung. Elliot had been devastated when his father passed 5 years ago, withdrawn and grieving for months. "I think you're overreacting," I said, but my voice sounded weak even to me. "Am I? Because from where I sit, it looks like you're taking your marriage for granted. Elliot is a good man, Morwenna. He works hard, he's devoted to you and Toby, and he deserves better than to be mocked in front of your coworkers." "I wasn't mocking him." "Then what would you call it?" I couldn't answer because deep down I knew she was right. I had mocked him. I'd reduced our intimate life to a punchline for the amusement of people who barely knew us. "I think," Janet continued, "that you need to decide what's really important to you, because if you keep going down this path, you're going to lose everything that matters." Driving home, her words echoed in my mind. But instead of feeling chastened, I felt angry. Who was she to lecture me about my marriage? She didn't know what it was like to feel invisible, unappreciated, taken for granted. When I got home, Elliot was in the garage, organizing tools with an intensity that seemed excessive. "How was tea with your mother?" I asked. "Fine." "She seems to think there are problems in our marriage." He stopped sorting screwdrivers and looked at me. "Are there?" The question was simple, but it felt loaded with months of unspoken resentment. "I don't know, Elliot. Are there? You tell me, Morwenna. You're the one who seems to have all the answers lately." And with that, he went back to his tools, leaving me standing in the doorway, feeling more alone than ever. Sunday morning, I woke to find Elliot's side of the bed empty. The sheets were cold, suggesting he'd been gone for a while. Downstairs, I found him at the kitchen table with his laptop, a cup of coffee, and what looked like printed documents spread around him. "You're up early," I said, trying to peer over his shoulder. He closed the laptop smoothly. "Couldn't sleep." "What were you working on?" "Just some paperwork." The vague answer irritated me. "What kind of paperwork?" "Insurance stuff. You wouldn't find it interesting." But as he gathered the papers, I caught a glimpse of what looked like phone bills and bank statements. My stomach clenched. "Elliot, are you investigating our finances?" "I'm reviewing our accounts. It's called being responsible. It's called being paranoid." He looked at me then, really looked at me, and I saw something in his eyes I'd never seen before. Cold calculation. "Paranoid about what, Morwenna?" The question felt like a trap. "Nothing. I just don't understand why you're suddenly so interested in paperwork." Maybe I should have been interested sooner. Before I could ask what that meant, Toby wandered into the kitchen in his pajamas, and the conversation ended. At work Monday, I felt like everyone was watching me. Conversation stopped when I approached groups of coworkers. People who used to chat freely seemed guarded, professional. "Is it just me, or is everyone acting weird?" I asked Jessica during our coffee break. "Weird how?" "I don't know. Distant." Jessica shifted uncomfortably. "Morwenna, can I ask you something? Are you and Elliot having problems?" "Why would you think that?" "Because Marcus mentioned that Elliot's been asking questions about the Christmas party. About who was there, what was said." My coffee suddenly tasted bitter. "Elliot's been calling people from my office?" "Just Marcus, I think. But Marcus talks, you know, and people are starting to wonder." "Wonder what?" "If maybe you weren't entirely joking the other night." The implication hit me like a physical blow. "That's ridiculous." "Is it? Because you and Zane have been spending a lot of time together lately. And last week, someone saw you at Cafe Luna during work hours." I felt exposed, vulnerable. "We're friends. Is that a crime?" "Of course not. But maybe you should be more careful about appearances." That afternoon, I confronted Zane in the supply room. "People are talking," I said without preamble. "Let them talk." He was standing close enough that I could smell his cologne. "This is serious, Zane. My husband is asking questions." "So tell him the truth." "Which truth? That we're friends? Or that I can't stop thinking about you?" The admission hung between us, dangerous and electric. "Morwenna," he said softly, reaching up to touch my face. What happened next was inevitable. His lips on mine, my hands fisting in his shirt, months of flirtation and frustration boiling over into something I couldn't take back. When we broke apart, I was shaking. "This is insane," I whispered. "This is honest." But as I straightened my clothes and tried to compose myself, all I could think about was Elliot sitting at our kitchen table with his paperwork, building some case I didn't yet understand. That evening, my sister Nina called. "Mum says you and Elliot are having problems." "Mum needs to mind her own business." "Morwenna, what's going on?" "Mum's worried, and frankly, so am I." Nina was 5 years younger than me, but she'd always been the responsible one. While I'd been partying in college, she'd been studying. While I'd been complaining about my marriage, she'd been building a career. "Nothing's going on. Elliot's just being difficult." "Difficult how?" "Suspicious, controlling. He's questioning everything I do, everywhere I go." "That doesn't sound like Elliot." "People change, Nina." "Yes, they do. Sometimes they change because they have reasons to be suspicious." The accusation in her voice stung. "What's that supposed to mean?" "It means I've known you my whole life, Morwenna. And when you start painting yourself as the victim, it usually means you're hiding something." I hung up on her, furious. But her words stayed with me, needling at my conscience. Wednesday evening, I was helping Toby with his math homework when Elliot came home carrying a manila folder. "How was school, buddy?" he asked Toby, but his eyes were on me. "Good. We're learning about fractions." "That's great. Why don't you finish up here, and then we can read a chapter of that book we started." After Toby went to his room, Elliot sat down across from me at the kitchen table. "We need to talk," he said, opening the folder. Inside were printouts, phone bills with numbers highlighted, bank statements with transactions circled, and what looked like screenshots of text messages. My mouth went dry. What is this? Evidence? Evidence of what? Of the affair you're having with Zane Lister. The words hit like a physical blow. Elliot, that's 47 phone calls in the last 3 weeks, text messages at all hours, lunch dates during work hours that you lied about. We're friends. Friends don't delete their text conversations every night. He knew about that too. I felt trapped, cornered. You've been spying on me. I've been protecting my family. From what? From a woman who's decided her marriage vows don't matter anymore. I stood up, pacing to the window. You don't understand. You don't know what it's like to feel invisible in your own life. So you decided to have an affair? It's not an affair. We're not. You're not what, Morwenna? You're not kissing him in supply rooms? You're not meeting him for secret lunches? You're not telling him things about our marriage that you won't tell me? Each question was another nail in my coffin. How much did he know? Have you been following me? I hired a private investigator. The admission shocked me into silence. You what? Last week, after I found the deleted texts on your phone. You went through my phone. You left it on the counter while you were showering. It buzzed with a message from Zane saying he couldn't wait to see you again. I remembered that text. I'd thought I'd deleted it immediately. Elliot, you have to understand. I understand perfectly. My wife is having an emotional affair, possibly a physical one, and she's been lying to me about it for weeks. It's not like that. Then tell me what it's like. Explain to me how publicly humiliating me at your office party was just a joke. Explain how secret meetings and deleted messages are just friendship. I couldn't, because when he laid it out like that, it sounded exactly like what it was. I never meant for this to happen. But it did happen, and now we have to deal with the consequences. What consequences? He closed the folder and looked at me with an expression I'd never seen before. Cold, determined, final. I'm filing for separation, Morwenna, and I'm seeking full custody of Toby. The words hit me like a physical blow. You can't do that. I can, and I will. I've already spoken to a lawyer. Elliot, please. We can work this out. We can go to counseling. We can... No, we can't. Because you've made your choice, and now I'm making mine. He stood up, taking the folder with him. You'll be served with papers tomorrow. I suggest you find yourself a lawyer. As he walked away, I felt my world crumbling around me. This wasn't how it was supposed to go. It was supposed to be about feeling alive, about being appreciated, about finding excitement in a mundane life. Instead, I'd lost everything that actually mattered. And the worst part was, I could hear Toby in his room, reading aloud to himself, completely unaware that his world was about to be shattered too. The legal papers arrived Thursday morning via courier while I was getting Toby ready for school. The envelope was thick, official, and seeing my name typed on formal legal documents made everything suddenly, terrifyingly real. What's that, Mom? Toby asked, looking up from his cereal. Just work stuff, honey. But my hands were shaking as I signed for the delivery. Inside were documents I could barely understand. Petitions for legal separation, custody arrangements, financial disclosures. The language was cold, clinical, reducing our 8-year marriage to bullet points and legal precedents. The custody section hit me like a physical blow. Elliot was seeking primary custody, with me getting supervised visitation until a full evaluation could be completed. Supervised visitation, like I was a danger to my own child. I called in sick to work and spent the morning on the phone with lawyers. The first 3 I contacted couldn't see me for weeks. The fourth, a woman named Linda Martinez, agreed to squeeze me in that afternoon. Her office was in a strip mall between a nail salon and a tax preparation service, not exactly inspiring confidence. Linda herself was younger than I'd expected, maybe early 30s, with tired eyes and a desk covered in case files. Mrs. Grant, she said, reviewing the papers I'd brought, this is pretty comprehensive. Your husband's attorney has done their homework. What does that mean? It means they have evidence to support their claims: phone records, financial statements, witness statements about your behavior. Witness statements? People from your office party, co-workers who've observed your interactions with Mr. Lister. My stomach dropped. They can't use office gossip in court. They can if it establishes a pattern of behavior that affects your fitness as a parent. I'm a good mother. I'm sure you are. But the court will look at stability, judgment, moral character. An affair, even an emotional one, raises questions about all of those things. So what do I do? Linda leaned back in her chair. First, you need to be completely honest with me. Are you having an affair with this Zane Lister? The question hung in the air. I thought about the kiss in the supply room, the secret meetings, the way my heart raced when I saw his name on my phone. It's complicated. Mrs. Grant, complicated doesn't work in family court. Either you're having an affair or you're not. We haven't slept together. But you've been intimate in other ways. I nodded, feeling like a teenager confessing to a parent. Then yes, legally speaking, you're having an affair, and that's going to be a problem. That evening, I tried to act normal for Toby's sake. We had dinner, I helped him with homework, we watched a movie together. But underneath the routine, I felt like I was drowning. Elliot came home after Toby was in bed. He'd been staying at his mother's, only coming by to see our son. We need to talk, I said when he walked through the door. I think we've said everything we need to say. Elliot, please, this is insane. You're trying to take my child away from me. I'm trying to protect my child from an unstable situation. I'm not unstable. You're having an affair, Morwenna. You've been lying for weeks. You publicly humiliated our family. How is that stable? It was a mistake. I know that now. But we can fix this. Some things can't be fixed. So that's it. 8 years of marriage and you're just throwing it away. I'm not the one who threw it away. The next morning, I called my mother. Morwenna, honey, I've been so worried, Patricia Vane said. Nina told me about your troubles. Mum, I need help. Elliot's trying to take Toby away from me. That's ridiculous. You're a wonderful mother. He has lawyers, evidence. I don't know what to do. Come stay with me for a while. Bring Toby. You need family support right now. But when I picked Toby up from school and suggested a sleepover at Grandma's, he seemed confused. What about Dad? Is he coming too? Not tonight, sweetheart. Just us. Are you and Dad getting divorced? The directness of the question caught me off guard. Why would you ask that? Because Tommy's parents got divorced and first his dad moved out, and then there were lots of meetings with lawyers, and then Tommy had to live in 2 different houses. Toby, your dad and I are just working through some problems, grown-up problems. Is it because you have a boyfriend? I nearly swerved off the road. What? Dad was talking to Grandma Janet on the phone, and I heard him say you had a boyfriend. Do you? My 7-year-old son was looking at me with confusion and hurt, and I realized how much damage I'd already done. No, sweetheart, I don't have a boyfriend. There's just been some misunderstandings between grown-ups. But even as I said it, I knew it was another lie in a growing pile of lies. At my mother's house, I broke down and told her everything. About the party joke, about Zane, about the kiss, about Elliot's evidence. Oh, honey, she said, rubbing my back while I cried. Men can be so unforgiving. Your father was the same way. One little mistake, and he'd hold it over my head for months. This isn't a little mistake, Mom. I betrayed my marriage. You were unhappy. A woman has a right to seek comfort when her husband is cold and neglectful. Elliot isn't cold and neglectful. Isn't he? When's the last time he took you out somewhere special? When's the last time he made you feel beautiful, desired? I couldn't remember, which felt like proof of her point. You're still young, Morwenna. You deserve passion, excitement. If Elliot can't give you that, maybe the separation is for the best. But as I watched Toby playing quietly with his toys, withdrawn and confused, I wondered if passion and excitement were worth destroying my child's security. Saturday afternoon, Nina came over. "Mum called me," she said without preamble. "She says Elliot's being unreasonable. He's trying to take Toby away from me. Maybe he has reasons. Not you, too. Morwenna, I love you, but you need to hear this. You screwed up, badly. And instead of taking responsibility, you're playing the victim." "I'm not playing anything. I made a mistake, but I don't deserve to lose my child." "Then fight for him. End things with this Zane person. Apologize to Elliot. Show the court you're willing to change." "It's too late for that. Is it? Or are you just afraid to give up whatever this affair is giving you?" The question stung because it was true. Even now, even facing the loss of my son, part of me didn't want to give up the excitement, the feeling of being desired. I can't just turn off my feelings. You can choose not to act on them. That's what being an adult means. Sunday morning, Elliot came to pick up Toby. They were going to spend the day together, something that used to be family time but was now father-son time. "Daddy!" Toby ran to him, and I saw Elliot's face soften in a way it hadn't for me in weeks. "Hey, buddy. Ready for our adventure?" "Where are we going?" "It's a surprise." As they prepared to leave, Elliot pulled me aside. "I've been thinking about what you said, about fixing this." Hope flared in my chest. "Yes?" "There's one way this could work. You end things with Zane immediately. You quit your job. We go to counseling. And you sign a post-nuptial agreement that gives me full custody if you ever cheat again." The conditions felt harsh, punitive. "Elliot, those are my terms. Take them or leave them." "I need time to think." "You have until tomorrow. After that, we proceed with the separation." As I watched them drive away, I felt the walls closing in. Everything I'd thought I wanted, excitement, passion, feeling alive, seemed trivial compared to the possibility of losing my son. But giving up Zane, quitting my job, signing away my rights, it felt like agreeing to become a prisoner in my own life. I had less than 24 hours to decide who I really was and what I was willing to sacrifice to keep my family together. I spent Sunday night staring at the ceiling, weighing Elliot's ultimatum. End things with Zane, quit my job, sign a post-nuptial agreement, submit to counseling and monitoring like a parolee. Part of me wanted to accept, to crawl back and beg forgiveness. But another part, the part that had felt dead for years until Zane brought it back to life, rebelled against the idea of such complete surrender. Monday morning, I called Elliot before he left for work. "I need more time," I said. "Time for what?" "To think about your offer. It's a big decision." "Morwenna, it's a simple question. Do you want to save your marriage or not?" "It's not simple, and you know it. You're asking me to give up everything, my job, my independence, my rights. You gave those up when you decided to have an affair. I made a mistake, but that doesn't mean I should have to become your prisoner." There was a long pause. "I see." "Elliot, wait." But he'd already hung up. At work, I was a mess. I kept checking my phone, hoping for another call from Elliot, a chance to explain myself better. Instead, I got a text from Zane. "You look upset. Want to talk?" I found him in the parking lot during lunch break, leaning against his truck. "Rough morning?" he asked. "Elliot gave me an ultimatum. End things with you or lose my son." Zane's expression hardened. "That's emotional blackmail." "Is it? Or is it a reasonable response to his wife having an affair?" "You're not happy with him, Morwenna. You told me that yourself." I also told him I'd think about his offer. "And?" I looked at Zane, handsome, exciting, uncomplicated, and then thought about Toby's confused face when he asked if I had a boyfriend. "I don't know." "Come here," Zane said, pulling me closer. "You deserve better than this. You deserve someone who appreciates you, who makes you feel alive." When he kissed me, I kissed him back, but all I could think about was how this moment might cost me everything that actually mattered. That afternoon, my phone rang. Linda Martinez, my lawyer. Mrs. Grant, we have a problem. Your husband's attorney just filed an emergency motion for temporary custody. What does that mean? It means they're asking the court to place your son with his father immediately, pending the outcome of the custody hearing. They can't do that. They can if they have evidence that the child is in immediate danger. What evidence? According to the filing, you've been bringing your son around your affair partner. Someone photographed you kissing this Zane person in a public parking lot today, with your son visible in a nearby car. My blood turned to ice. Toby wasn't there today. The photograph shows a child in the back seat of your car. That's impossible. And then I remembered. After school pickup, I'd stopped by the office to get some files I'd forgotten. Toby had stayed in the car while I ran inside. I'd been gone maybe 5 minutes. Mrs. Grant, please tell me you didn't expose your child to your affair. It wasn't like that. He was in the car. He didn't see anything. It doesn't matter what he saw. It matters what the court will think about your judgment. I felt like I was drowning. What happens now? Emergency hearing tomorrow morning. You need to be there, and you need to be prepared to explain why your son shouldn't be removed from your custody. That evening, I sat Toby down for dinner, trying to act normal while my world collapsed around me. How was school today, sweetheart? Okay, Mrs. Peterson says we're going to make Valentine's cards next week. That sounds fun. Will you and Dad both come to the Valentine's party? The innocent question broke my heart. I don't know, honey. We'll see. Are you and Dad going to live in different houses? I set down my fork. Toby, do you remember what I told you about grown-up problems? That you and Dad are working through them? Well, sometimes when grown-ups have problems, they need to spend some time apart to figure things out. Like when I have to go to my room to think about what I did wrong. Something like that. How long do grown-ups have to think? I don't know, sweetheart. That night, after Toby was asleep, I called Nina. I screwed up, I said without preamble. Really, really screwed up. What happened? I told her about the ultimatum, about my refusal, about the photograph and the emergency hearing. Jesus, Morwenna, what were you thinking? I wasn't thinking. I felt trapped, and I made a stupid decision. You made a series of stupid decisions, and now you might lose Toby. I know that. Do you? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like you're still choosing this Zane person over your family. That's not fair, isn't it? Elliot offered you a way back and you turned him down. Why? Because his terms were impossible. Were they? Or were you just not willing to give up your affair? I couldn't answer because she was right. Nina, what am I going to do? You're going to end things with Zane, tonight, completely and permanently. Then you're going to call Elliot and beg him to take you back. It's too late for that. Maybe, but it's the only chance you have left. After I hung up, I sat in my mother's guest room, looking at photos of Toby on my phone, his first day of school, his birthday party, Christmas morning. In every picture, he was smiling, secure, happy. What kind of mother was I if I was willing to risk his stability for a relationship that, honestly, was more about excitement than love? I called Zane. Hey, beautiful, how did it go with the lawyer? Zane, we need to talk. That doesn't sound good. It's not. This thing between us, it has to end. There was a pause. Because of the ultimatum? Because I'm about to lose my son. Morwenna, you're letting him manipulate you. No, I'm finally seeing clearly. I made choices that hurt my family, and now I have to live with the consequences. So that's it? You're just going to crawl back to him? I'm going to try to save what's left of my son's childhood. And what about us? There is no us, Zane. There never really was. We were just two people who were bored and made bad decisions. That's not how I remember it. Then you remember it wrong. I hung up before he could argue further. Then I called Elliot. Morwenna, it's late. I know. I just wanted to tell you that I ended things with Zane. Completely. and I'm ready to accept your terms. It's too late for that. Elliot, please, I know I screwed up, but you had your chance. You chose him over our family. I chose wrong. I see that now. Seeing it now doesn't undo the damage. What about Toby? He needs his mother. He needs stability. He needs to know that the people who are supposed to protect him actually will. I can be that person. You had 8 years to be that person, Morwenna. Instead, you decided to blow up our lives for a workplace fling. The line went dead. I spent the rest of the night preparing for the emergency hearing, knowing that in a few hours I'd be fighting for the right to remain in my son's life, and knowing that I might very well lose. The courtroom was smaller than I expected, bright and cold under the fluorescent lights. I sat beside my lawyer, watching Elliot and his attorney lay out their files like they already knew how this would end. The judge listened as his lawyer calmly described my affair, the photos, the office party, and finally, the picture of me kissing Zane while Toby sat in my car. When the judge asked if I had put my desires above my son's well-being, I tried to defend myself, then heard the truth in my own silence. I admitted I had made terrible choices. I said I loved Toby. The judge said love wasn't enough without judgment and stability. She gave Elliot temporary primary custody and ordered that I see my son only under supervision, twice a week. The gavel sounded like the end of my life. Elliot told me it didn't have to be permanent, that if I did counseling and proved I could put Toby first, things could change. But that night, explaining to my 7-year-old why he was moving in with Daddy and why he'd only see me in a special place a few hours a week, I felt like I'd already lost him. 3 months later, I was in a small studio, working a new job and visiting Toby at the Family Services Center. Counseling forced me to look straight at my selfishness and the chaos I had brought into our home. Zane was gone, transferred after HR got involved. Elliot filed for divorce, and the final papers arrived in a thin envelope that turned 8 years of marriage into schedules and signatures. Sitting alone with those documents, I finally understood. My little jokes, my need to feel desired, my affair, they hadn't made me more alive. They had cost me the life that actually mattered. Sometimes the price of chasing excitement is losing the family that loved you as you were.